Hi everyone, I'm Tom and today I'm going to be showing you Enormity. We are spacers trapped aboard an enormous ship, the Shepherd. There has been an incident and there are intruders aboard. We are going to be taking on missions. Through missions and boss fights, we are going to be exploring our ship, trying to find out more about what happened, fighting off these invaders as we go, having great big boss fights in incursions. The boss I have in my prototype is the Mothman. This is kind of a special figure of him making friends with one of the spacers. This is on Kickstarter right now from Into the Unknown, who are the studio behind Eon Trespass Odyssey. You can see on my channel already a few videos for that game. If you are a fan of that game or were curious about it, some of the elements of it carry over into this game. Part of having a token pool and giving tokens to the next player to be able to use on their turn. The incursions, the big boss fights, function very much like the boss fights in Eon Trespass Odyssey. But whereas that was a game of two halves of, storybook reading and then going to a boss fight, this is more spaceship crawling, as there are things out here. There will be discoveries to be made. You will either go on specific missions that are set up through a storybook. You can just play one-offs if you would like to, but you can also play one-offs in a persistent world, because this is a great big spaceship. All sorts of stuff is happening all over it. There is a lot of potential for a lot of stuff to be happening here. I've got a limited prototype of it, so it has only got a couple of scenarios so far. Some paragraphs, some enemy types, but it should give you an idea of what the final thing will be like, what the idea is behind it anyway. And you can go to the campaign page, which will be linked in the description or the corner of the screen, to check out what they have in store for this. So here are our 4 spacers in the starting room of this test scenario. I have got the minis set up here. The game is also going to be available in a standee version. There are our heroes. Same for the enemies and the Mothman boss. But what are we doing here? Well, my little intro bit tells us this is the mission log from the NASF Coventry. Time undetermined. Commander Fuentes recording. We're forked. Let me start over. Situation is foobar. Science assured me the Shepherd could not make another singularity point jump. It just did. So much for the fancy tech. How much did it cost, by the way? How many corners cut to finance it? Now, we have no idea where we are, how far from origin we are. Don't know where we're headed, but we're headed somewhere. The Shepherd continues on some predetermined flight path. The status of the Coventry remains unknown. As of the time of this recording, we're stranded on the Shepherd's decaying bow solar ring. The jump broke something inside the ship and the outer manifold fields are failing. When it jumps again, and it will tear itself apart, tear us apart. We're proceeding towards the elevator, but listen, there's something here with us, a presence. I know how it sounds, alright? But it's here. It burns at the corners of our eyes, makes us see things, black things moving in the ducts, in the wall crawl spaces, what even tore those ISO panels. And the thing is, the solar ring is alight, and the power is flowing. Do you understand? We're stuck in the void, between origin and whatever terrible place the Shepherd is carrying us to. There is no star here. Where does all the damn light come from? We need to get the hell out of here, now. And then, flashes in the dark tells me, the last jump broke something inside the Shepherd. The solar ring you're on is falling apart. You need to get to the radial elevator before it collapses completely. You hear things moving in the ducts, wet smacks, knuckles cracking. You need to hurry. Our main objective, the elevator should be somewhere ahead, there where the light flickers. But we also have a secondary objective. Light is playing tricks on you. There are things in the walls, or possibly in your heads. You need to make sure it's one or the other, or it will slowly drive you mad. There's a faint locator fob signal on the tracker. Should you check it out? So we are in this starting room, and we have a lot of predetermined things on this map. In some scenarios, they will be fixed discoveries. Sometimes there will be mysteries that you won't know about yet. When we go over there, we will discover them from a deck, specific to this demo scenario. We have these anomalous readings that are to do with our secondary objective. There are caches to investigate where we can draw from a special loot deck that's specific to the bit we're on, the solar ring. In setup, I actually had to get this from a sealed envelope, and there are several just in this little prototype. I say little, it's a lot of hours of content already. There are secret stickers. I'm definitely not covering a tea stain with my thumb. And there are blips. Now, these are potentially enemies. We've got our radars. We can see these blips moving around. Could they be, electrical malfunctions, background noise, whatever? Or could they be the Grin? We know they are some of the grisly monsters that are going to be hunting us this scenario. The way the game flows in an extraction here, we move the countdown marker one space down the countdown track, but don't do it in the first round. Here's the countdown track. In setup, we put various things on here that are going to trigger once the countdown marker reaches their track. You would also sometimes have an extraction marker on the track saying when we can get extracted from the mission. In the moment, we need to find that point. That's our main objective right now. Our main objective is to go to these arrows. Now, the countdown tracker is in 3 sections. This kind of represents how aware the invaders are of us. In the white, they don't even know we're here yet. In the red, they've started to got some awareness. In the black, they are actively hunting us down with everything they've got. The stats of the enemies will change. As they start to get more aware of us, they might start to move more. They might be able to withstand a bit more damage before they can be defeated. How they behave in patrols will change. The dice that you roll when you roll for noise, all sorts of things will change as things kind of get down to the wire. So then we go to the main action phase, which is the spacer phase. We will all take actions in the order we like. You need to have at least 4 spaces in a scenario, so if there are fewer than 4 players, you need to be doubling up a bit, or maybe quadrupling up. In the final game, there will be opportunities to create your own characters from scratch. For this prototype, I have got some pre-made characters. We've got Isaac Bohm, who is an engineer. The characters are all made up of a class card, so he's an engineer up here, and a suit card. Everyone has got a standard EVA suit. Now on the front, it tells us special skills that the character has, different stat values they have when they're asked to roll for a particular stat. That's how many dice they'll get. They have these adrenaline tracks. We will be gaining adrenaline throughout the game, and it tells us what tokens we will add to the pool. Because like Aeon Trespass Odyssey, this includes the inverted combat system, where everybody starts out, heroes and monsters, kind of standard, not able to do too much. But as adrenaline starts pumping, as we start to fear for our lives, as we start to take damage, as things kind of reach a climax, we will unlock more and more of these tokens, be allowed to do more. Our weapons can get more powerful, but so too can the enemies' attacks, their ability to withstand damage, and their eagerness to hunt us. Now, as well as all of that stuff, your character and suit cards will define the action cards that you have, and in the full game, there is going to be an upgrade tree where you can start to unlock more stuff. The cards are sleeved, and they have to be because the cards are paired up in this game. You can pair them up however you like. So the class told me 3 cards to have, the suit told me 3 cards to have, and it recommended that I pair them in this way, so I did. On your turn, you'll get to play all 3 cards, but the side is up to you. We've been given some equipment by the scenario. So Isaac's got a survival knife, a polymer pistol, and an overcharged headlamp. Has some extra light for when we're trying to find stuff. We have Marcus, or Papa as he prefers, who is from our security division, who has a communicator and a polymer rifle. Aubrey from the science division, who has the knife pistol combo again and a rudimentary scanner. This is the ammo, by the way, of everyone's weapons. And we have Juliet, who is from the Ops division. And they've got a suppressor grenade as well as the rifle. So we can choose anyone we like to go first. So let's say Isaac went first. So you need to play your card. So let's start out with a steady walk. He can move 2 spaces, but it makes noise. Or he can spend a token to fast reload. The tokens we're talking about are discipline, confidence, and expertise. Various game effects will add these to the pool on a spacer's turn. When they're added, they go into the incoming section, can't be spent from here, but at the end of that spacer's turn, they will slide into the active section and can be spent by the next player. Remember, it's always up to us who goes next, so it's important to get that right turn order so that the best player for the job can spend all of the tokens that are available. As it is, we've got no tokens, so Isaac would just be moving a couple of spaces. So I can move 1, 2 and try and get a hold of this anomalous reading. Oh no, enormous invasion. Hi, Marty. So we've moved the 2 spaces, now it needs to make noise. So how do we do that? Well, the grin tells us that it's white dice when we're in the white section of the countdown. Here are some white dice. We need to roll 1 for each blip that is on the screen. Oh, Marty's just destroyed the blips a bit, hasn't he? So you roll a die for each of the blips, and you are hoping not to get the things I haven't rolled there. You're hoping not to get these. Now, the lines are used when we're trying to do things. The lines are successes or half successes. The red curves here are crits. They're important for attacking. But let's say I had rolled some bad things here. For every one of these symbols that I'd rolled, I would need to move a blip closer to the person who just made noise. so I can choose any of them. But if the blips come into contact with the character's space, so the blips are all on intersections in between spaces, so I'd have to move one closer to. If it got into the space, we would reveal it and see what we've come across. So let's say that did happen. We would flip it over, and the symbols tell us if you are in that section of the countdown, an enemy will spawn. So we would be in the white section, so one grin would spawn next to us. If we'd been in the red section of the countdown, 2 would spawn adjacent to the character instead. And it can be nothing, it can be spawning the enemies, it can also spawn unique forms of the enemy, where, for example, wide grin, they would get boosts to all of their stats, they would disable one of their abilities. So we've had the noise roll. Then I want to get the token that we've stolen, the anomalous discovery. So for that, I need a scavenge action. And the scavenge action is inside this red box, which means it is an adrenaline action. When you do an adrenaline action, you move this adrenaline bar one space up. Other things on here are our health, we've got 9, our stress, we've got 2. If they ever meet or cross, we have a stress breakdown, and these will end up being terrible ongoing things we don't want to happen. As the adrenaline moves up, though, every symbol that it meets or has passed, we get as tokens. So I'm going to get a discipline token now into the incoming pool. If we have any abilities, or I should say specifically, the next player, because this is in the incoming place where it can't be spent, at the end of the space's turn, it will go into the active section, the next space will get to spend it. If they have abilities that want to spend discipline, they can spend them from there. These can be spent to turn potentials, what we were trying to avoid in the noise rolls, they can turn potentials into successes, or if it was available for a noise roll and you'd rolled a load of potentials which would move blips, you can spend discipline to ignore it and pretend you didn't roll that one instead. So they can be very useful for a lot of things. So in the future, when he goes to 2 adrenaline, he'll get a confidence and a discipline into the incoming phase. You can spend confidence to re-roll a die. You can spend multiple to re-roll multiple dice, but you have to decide how many you spend in a re-rolling before you roll any of them. And expertise is the thing that's usually a cost for some kind of ability. You can also put them onto these tactics we've got here to unlock powerful abilities. They want 6 or 8 of those tokens to be on there. So early game seems like a lot, but they can ramp up as the adrenaline goes up on the characters. So we grab the scavenge token, and it tells us for this scenario, we need to roll the black die, adding 1 for each previously picked up anomalous reading. So the most this can go to is 3, basically. So there's 2. If I had a load of these, I could spend them to turn these potentials into successes. If I had a load of previously discovered anomalies, I need to get 5, and then we can go to the entry in the Mythos book. And we can move again. This one, Anxious Sneaking, moves you 2 spaces, but you gain a stress rather than rolling for noise. And move on to this discovery token. These are predetermined. We know the numbers for this, but the deck is for our demo scenario. And Isaac's found a jammed airlock door. At first you think it's a system lock, then you notice the charring. The airlock door has buckled from heat. You may force the door open or try running diagnostics. Test strength, of which Isaac has 1, or intelligence, of which Isaac has 1. So, he'll be rolling 1 die no matter what for this. Doesn't have any tokens to spend, so we're just at the mercy of this. That's half a result, so that's going to be a failure, I think. For a while, nothing you do works. If something so trivial proves a challenge, what hope have you of survival? Gain a stress. Regardless of the result, you open the door and remove it. And we could have just got it open with no negative effect, or got it open and put a token in the spacer pool. So the door's now open and everyone can go out. Then Isaac would end his turn. Incoming tokens would come into active and are available for the next player. And the character can go and do things like go and interact with these caches. These would get you loot from the loot deck. He gets to draw from the loot deck specific to us and could be unlocking things like the contraband rifle. You see, compared to a normal rifle, it's got the same range and damage and stuff and dice that it's rolling, but you get an extra free token for the roll. If you're at 5 or more adrenaline, you get 2 built-in successes rather than an extra die to roll. And it's devastating. If you roll a crit with it, you get to roll another die of that colour. Could be knives, more grenades, alien weaponry, and in the full game, all of this will be available to be upgraded. You can interact with consoles. The console here has got a passage number, so you would go and find that in the Mythos book. There's still scavenge actions that let you search this, search that, pick up these tokens. and we go and find 110 in the Mythos book, you find a working console, its keyboard covered in a thin film of the oily substance. You may open doors B1, B2, or both. If you used a search action, make a noise. So we could open all of the doors, we might reveal things in there, but as it is, there's nothing in these rooms that we know of in setup. The blips can move through doors and walls and things, so we might as well have access. Let's say our security division moved around a bit and wanted to do a scout action. So scouting would increase the adrenaline and add more tokens to the pool. Tokens are discarded at the end of a turn if you don't use them. Every suit has a built-in light source, so a range of 2 and 1 white die. If the engineer had scouted, for example, they would have gotten to use a red die, a better die for a light, because they've got the overcharged headlamp. So we would roll the die hoping for a success. So there we go, we've got a success. You get to have a peek at what the blip token is. So it's within range 2. You count orthogonally for any range in the game. And so this would be, we're in the white section, that's going to be 2 enemies. We could choose to just leave that as it is. We know what the blip is, and if it comes into contact with you, then it's going to be trouble. But you could still go about your way, continuing your turn if you had any actions left, or you can choose to reveal it. So this would be 2 grins coming right out, and then that's gone. Then if you want, and only because it was an enemy, you can do a free attack action. You can flip the card and do a free attack action. You don't get to move your adrenaline bar, but you do still add tokens again for the next player's turn. So it would deplete the weapon 1 ammo. You could burst 2 here, so you could attack 2 people. But this is a linear rifle. It can only shoot in a straight line, so we're only going to be able to hit 1 of them. Then we resolve the attack roll. So it is 2 red attacks, and we have a free virtual confidence. There isn't a token in the pool for this, but for this specific roll, we have a confidence, so we could reroll 1 of the dice. So we are looking for successes on this roll, and so we get 1.5. So we could use the confidence to reroll 1. So that's a success, we might as well leave that one. Oh, another half. So that would get us nowhere. Let's imagine we live in a world where we did much better than that, because the Grin in the white stage of the countdown have got a 3 AT value. You need to do 3 successes in order to defeat them. And also, there's a first contact ability. So the first time you come into contact with the Grin, you need to clear the spacer pool. If it was already empty, everyone gains a stress. So we would clear everything out of the active pool for this virtual one. With that roll, we would be able to defeat 1 of them, and they have a response when they are wounded. The corridor fills with cracking. If there are less than 2 Grin or blips on the board, immediately spawn a blip. There are 2 blips. You can also roll for critical attacks, so it wouldn't be great with this gun. You can see there's a little critical symbol here that's just got 1 quadrant coloured in. Remember I said you rolled these, you can get crits. You're basically trying to get a full circle. So with this particular gun, you would need to have gotten an extra die, possibly from having your adrenaline at 5 or more, and roll 3 of these crit symbols. Then that would be a critical hit. And for the Grin, doing a critical hit on them says you may perform a bonus attack. A whole other one. So 1 has been defeated, but unfortunately, the gun makes noise. So we have got to roll for blips plus 1 per ammo spent. So back to the 3 dice, and the potentials would move the blips. Luckily, no potentials, but there is still a Grin there to be dealt with. If they hadn't been dealt with after all of the spacers had gone, we would move on to the Intruder phase, where they activate according to their AI. Bosses have their own decks of AI cards and are more complex. We'll get onto those. But for the enemies, they have their behavior. Their target is the closest spacer, and they try and work through these protocols until they have done one successfully. So Black Snap, if target is adjacent, no, we would move on to the next one. If target is in movement range, their movement in the white section of the countdown is 3. So it is in target range. The grinning thing leaps to you frantically and bites you in the shoulder. So you'd need to roll 2 red dice for the attack. So it jumps over, zigzagging. It's going to roll 2 red dice, and successes are its damage to you. It manages to do 3 damage. If you had expertise tokens in the pool, you could spend these to reduce the damage taken by 1 to a minimum of 1. There can be additional effects, so if they dealt 6 or more damage with this, you gain the gift condition card, which I will show you because it's a bit of a mystery in the demo. The gift, only in the full game. You have been gifted a great thing. It grows within you now. Do not discard this card at the end of a run or incursion. So that gift will stay with you. So try not to let it deal 6 or more damage. Or maybe you just want to see on that card. I'm kind of curious. I don't imagine it's going to be good though. So we would resolve all of the enemy's things. Then, a really cool thing. After all of the intruders have activated, we need to scan for blips. So there are 3 decks according to the number that we're at on the countdown track. So you grab the top, they're all shuffled up, you grab the top white card and put it into your scanner, and it is going to tell you how these blips are moving. So we would go to the person, which I think is Papa, who last made noise. So the scanner would go over him, and the blips are split into quadrants based on his position. So in the northwest quadrant, these blips are going to move 1 space. Down in the southwest here, 2 spaces. Oh, they move in a zigzag. And that's it for our blips at the moment. The numbers in the middle, going to mean something in the final game or the scenario that you're playing. And then we'd have a new turn where we tick down the countdown track, resolve any discoveries that are on there. Let's have a look at another one, eh? Solar flare. An eerie sense of anxious elation settles over you, then the corridor fills with brilliant light. As if you were touching God himself, it takes all your willpower to not walk out into the blinding, searing flame. A solar flare lights the corridor up. Each spacer tests willpower or dexterity, needing 2 successes. So Isaac's dexterity's the best. So hope for 2 successes on that. Succeeds. So you may gain an adrenaline. Why not at this early stage? Because that would add another 2 tokens to the pool, and we could potentially add in tons for the first player's turn in the next round. So everyone would test gaining tokens and stuff. If you fail, you would gain the Dazed condition card, which reduces your range by 1 for a round. If you gain it again while you've still got it, then you get blinded instead. Then remove any blip on scorched spaces. They've got a little symbol in the corner to remind you they're scorched, and the searing heat is a clue. So we could maybe have left that there and hope for that to happen. We know what it is in the setup of this just demo, so I don't know if there's a circumstance where you'd know that was coming, but maybe it would be good to lead them into that. You'd remove any blip in there and then spawn new ones on closest spawn points. If there are any intruders on scorched spaces, move them so they are no longer on these spaces. Until the end of the round, they cannot enter such spaces. So we would keep going, trying to avoid the blips, trying not to make as much noise, trying to take care of the grin that will be constantly spawning. Then once we got to our objective here, we would open location book 2, find the other half of this section of the ship. Now these bits in the location books can be reused in the future because they can be a completely different section of the ship. You can see some symbols that weren't covered with tokens in this particular setup. They might be things later on. They might be random discoveries you can find. Things can be very different. Maybe the other half of it wouldn't be the same one. So we'd set this up with tokens. Somebody can try and go down this like little air duct here if they wanted. But there are more potential spawn points for blips that will spawn in the closest place to us in the future. And we will be going on trying to discover our extraction point and get out of here before the time ticks right down. With more and more things spawning, these will make blips spawn on the last active spacer, or the last one to make noise. There'll be more events occurring, more things to discover. There's a new console here that will probably open these doors. So now, in like future turns, these grin are terrifying, so you'll take extra stress from attacking from adjacent locations, but you can take a scout action on revealed grin to make them try and run away, because by default they're light sensitive and don't want to be near you. There is a discovery that's hanging around here. Reveal this card when someone causes 3 or more noise in a single roll, and I will discover it for you. And that person would be told to be very quiet. You have drawn the ire of the thing that perches on the veiled sun at your own peril. It emerges from the light, radiant, dripping liquid metal, to the hidden song notes of your built-in Geiger counters. The intruder known as the Mothman performs a flash attack against the spacer who made the noise. Place the Mothman miniature. Not so miniature. Here's the normal Mothman, the one that is not tearing a spacer apart. Adjacent to that spacer, draw a single Mothman AI 2 card and resolve it against that target. And then place the Mothman on space exclamation mark of the countdown track. This would actually mean if we let the countdown get to the exclamation mark point, we would have to fight against the Mothman. The Mothman's got 7 AT, can't actually be wounded, or can it? And you'll get radiation from it, it'll ignore obstacles, but you can lose some stress and leave suppress tokens. Some of your guns can do that as well, leave like suppressing fire that slows enemies down from getting to you and makes it easier for other spacers to attack them. You can also end up fighting the Mothman in an incursion here, like a full-on boss scenario, which will be more familiar to you if you have played Eon Trespass Odyssey. In this particular one, there'll be batteries strewn about, and we start in the middle ready to fight. Mothman over there. I've got no space to show you things. The bosses have an AI deck and a BP deck. They've got numbers on the back, so they've got levels 1, 2, and 3. At the start, it will just be the level 1s. And the AI cards will give you behaviours that the Mothman will do on their turn. So they target the last to make noise. try and go and attack that person. So when you attack a boss, you reveal the top BP card, and this is the AT value you are trying to beat. It's not just printed on the card, you'll find out for the attack. And the backs of the cards, they're all ones at the start, but they will level up, and so you can see like how deadly the attack is going to be next, how hard to wound the next attack needs to be. So if you did enough to wound, it would perform the signature attack against the attacker, which would be Enkindle. Takes a pot shot at the furthest spacer in its front. Spacing is important for a lot of things in this. Roll 2 red dice at you. If it did 3+ damage, it would do radiation to you. If you failed to wound it, it would do Nuclear Litany instead. Put a radiation token on this card. If you end your turn in zone 3, which is like a zone 3 spaces orthogonally or diagonally from the boss, you would suffer Radiation X, where X is the number of tokens on the card. Which means you gain that many radiation tokens. If you have 5, you die. When there are 5 or more on this card, it gets flipped and it's supernova instead, where you can get permanently blinded and stuff. Horrible things can happen. So that's if you failed to wound it on this BP card. If you manage to be critical in it instead of any of the other bits, you blow off part of the hard suit covered in circular writing. The Mothman shivers. Discard 2 radiation tokens from Nuclear Litany. Either way, as long as you wounded or critted, you take this BP card as a wound. In our particular case, it tells us that we need to do 7 wounds to beat the Mothman, or 10 if you're experienced with the battle system. It's all prototype stuff. Don't worry about that. So we put 1 in the wound stack, and this does a couple of things. We just wounded a level 1 BP. You grab a level 2 BP and shuffle that into the deck. So now there is a more difficult card shuffled in here. See, the AT value is higher. It might do more vicious things if you fail to wound it, or even if you succeed, actually. You can understand him being annoyed with you hitting him. But also then you need to find a level 1 card from the deck or the discard. Later on there might not be very many ones left. Remove that from the game, and a more lethal AI level 2 card is getting shuffled into here instead. This is where the backs of the cards start to come into play, where you can see where the harder or more deadly things are going to be coming out. If you wound a BP2 card, it goes into the stack. You can guess what happens. You put a BP3 in here, find a 2 from the AI and shuffle in a 3 instead. And if you manage to wound one of those BP3 cards, it goes into the wound stack and counts as 2 wounds instead. And we need to do 7 in total to defeat the Mothman. There is so much more stuff than this. And I feel like I've been going on for ages in this short overview, but there is so much to talk about and so much that isn't in here yet. There are secret codes, things you need to decrypt. There is just a standard difficulty for everything I've been talking to you about, but there will be ways to modify that in the final game. Some effects may transport you to a different place, alien, eldritch, hostile, but things in the full game, and you've seen bits of this already. There will be character progression, you will get different suits, and you will be able to upgrade your character, giving you access to different action cards, and therefore different pairings of action cards, loads of different options. Your characters can die, there is a whole kind of campaign-wide persistent world. You might be able to steer into these unknowable, unfathomable things. And there's like a great big, like, as I said, like we might come back to that bit of the ship. It's a great big Metroidvania style map. The final books, I don't know if you've seen like the scale of the books so far, there's not that many pages in them. The final ones are going to be huge and will make up one enormous map. They want to make this a game where you can just have one-offs if you want to, and they will, contribute to a persistent world, or you can play through great big campaigns. There are going to be 3 in the box, including the Dockside Sun introductory campaign, which you've seen like a tiny taste of. And even through those campaigns, you won't have seen all of the stuff in the Shepherd. And then I think I've seen on the campaign pages going to be expansions already with like extra campaigns. Basically, more. And it will all be made possible if you would like it. Oh, I've made such a mess of all of this now. Even just in this little prototype, there is so much to talk about and so much to show off. I know the intention is to make the overviews brief, but yeah, sometimes the scope of things is just huge. And if you would like to see, like, if the incursion stuff, the boss fights have intrigued you, I've said it a few times, but check out my fight video for Aeon Trespass Odyssey, which I think you can get from the same publisher. And that is a more, like Greek mythology kind of game. And it is like exploring on a map in a different way to this, and then going into boss fights. There's no crawling around a map and fighting little creatures in that. But yeah, there is an in-depth fight video where you can see all of this in action if that system has intrigued you. Again, the campaign page is linked in the description. You can get a copy for yourself, make this happen. And yeah, from the promises and their hopes and stuff, this is a game that you could spend an enormous amount of time on. Hopefully I've given you sort of an idea of whether you would like to. Thank you very much for watching this. There are hundreds more videos on the channel if you'd like to see more from me. But for now, thanks for watching and goodbye.